We're back with Barbara Robinson in the commercial kitchen at the fairgrounds. Today we're going to make raised rye rolls. Say that 5 times fast.
These raised rye rolls actually are rye and whole wheat and all-purpose, and we use the King Arthur. What I've started with is a bowl of, it was boiling water, and there's a cup in there, and there's a very large 3 tablespoons worth of Crisco, which I'm going to mix up and hope it kind of incorporates a little bit. It might be chunky. It really doesn't, it will all get mixed in. And over here on the side, I've started another bowl with warm water. There's about 1/4 cup of water and a little over a teaspoon of molasses. And let me see if the water over here is cool enough and warm enough to add our yeast. So we'll just put that in there and let that set while this cools down.
What temperature should the water be at?
It should be around 105 degrees. I'm going to use the fork to mix the yeast. We're to add the yeast mixture to this water here, or any water, or any other liquid that you might be using to make your rolls or bread or whatever you do. The heat will kill the yeast, and that's the last thing we want. We want the yeast to bubble up and be happy and make whatever we're cooking rise nicely. So now I've added these, and I'm going to add a beaten egg, which I've already beaten. I'm going to mix these. I'm going to have 1/4 cup of sugar in there as well, and a tablespoon of salt. Normally I just put in 1 cup of the rye flour first, but I put them all in one container. I have the rye flour here and 1 cup of wheat flour, and at the bottom you may be able, oh, here we are, you can see there's 1 cup of all-purpose flour. So I'm going to put about 1/3 of that in there. If I were to use all rye flour or all wheat flour, it may make a very heavy roll. And I found that mixing the rye and the whole wheat makes not only a nice soft roll, but also very flavorful. So I mix this up really good. The 3 cups of flour, various flours, and I'm using a different utensil. Really sticky, so I have a little extra all-purpose flour setting out to add to it. So I'm going to add a little all-purpose flour. I'm going to flour the board. This recipe actually is an adaptation from a recipe that I received from Grace Cummings, whose sisters were the owners of Barjo's. So I've always thought this was a pretty cool recipe to have. Grease the bowl. It's going to go in the refrigerator. And it has to stay in there for at least 2 hours. Now we're going to cover this bowl with plastic wrap, and it's going to go in the refrigerator. We're ready to start with the rye rolls. We're going to turn them into rolls, and then after that we're going to let them rise. They've come out of the refrigerator, say about 20 minutes ago, so that they kind of warm up a bit. And there you go. And this is a little, This is a little soft, so I'm going to. I found that it was easier cutting them and having something to go by rather than taking them individually and hoping you had enough. So there we are. We have 24 little pieces. I'm going to take each one and I'm going to turn it into a nice, neat ball. And I line them up, just dip them in butter. It's kind of a messy job, but makes them good. This way we don't need to grease the pan before we put the rolls in, and they don't stick to each other. So you have a nice roll that pops apart and it's an individual. They're going to be covered up, nice clean cloth, and they're going in the proofer. And they'll rise anywhere from a half an hour to an hour and a half depending on the heat, so you just kind of have to keep track of them. Out of the proofer, and using the convection oven, it's 375 rather than 400. Been in there for 6 minutes, and usually at home I would cook them for 6 minutes, turn the pan, and cook them for another 6 minutes. But since I'm not accustomed to this oven, we're going to take a look at them, turn them around, and it looks like I'll set them for about 4 minutes and look again. They look really good. And they come apart nicely. They have a nice crust on the top. And they'll cool before we can take them out and taste them.